How do you keep your family fed nutritious foods while not breaking the bank, especially in today's economy? Today I've got 5 really practical but kind of unconventional tips that help us keep our family of 9 fed, healthy, and we stay in budget. So something that I really struggled with over the years, and probably a lot of you have struggled with, is finding healthy, affordable snacks for your children. The snacks at the store are often way more expensive per pound than even meat, and that's not even counting healthy snacks. And even healthy snacks can have some kind of undesirable ingredients in them. So the question that I asked myself was, what did moms, let's say 150 years ago, give their children when they needed a snack? And the answer that came to mind right away is bread. I did some research and I decided that if I was going to be giving my children bread as a staple, as their main snack, I wanted to make them the healthiest bread possible. So I invested in a grain mill, and you don't need to invest in a grain mill. You can buy fresh milled flour from a lot of co-ops or even your local health food store. And I invested in this grain mill. I got a budget one on Marketplace, and I started learning to bake whole grain bread. It was really important to me that it was fresh milled whole grain bread because I wanted the bran in there. I wanted it to be fresh. I wanted all the vitamins and minerals there, and the bran also stabilizes your blood sugar and it just helps you feel more satiated, and the fiber actually feeds bacteria in your gut, so some great benefits for your gut bacteria. And I started baking about 4 loaves a week for my family. And this has been such a game changer as far as snacks go. The bread is always there as a snack between meals. It's a filler when maybe the meal was a bit smaller. Sometimes it's our breakfast. But the wonderful thing is we actually used to not be able to tolerate bread very well. I had stopped buying bread from the store, but once I started making this fresh milled sourdough bread, my kids didn't have any problems with it, and it just really keeps them satiated between meals. It's been such a game changer giving our kids snacks. We also like to give them fresh fruit, and we also do a lot of smoothies in the summer. We have goats, and I do a big thing of goat milk yogurt, mix in some frozen fruit. I like the giant boxes of strawberries and blueberries from Azure Standard. They're actually like a little bit cheaper than Walmart, and they don't have all the sprays and pesticides. I buy those, we make smoothies, and those really keep us satiated. I'm not perfect. Definitely we keep a stash of granola bars on hand for those days when we run out of everything. But I do keep them put away. I don't want them to be our main snack. The next thing we do that has really helped us save money buying healthy foods for our large family is we have a kind of a buyer's club. I couldn't really think of a better term for it. But when I say buyer's club, I mean a group of like-minded people who are always on the lookout for deals for healthy, from scratch foods. And I think all of you should belong to some type of buyer's club. Some of you probably already do. You split up orders with your moms or your sisters or your friends. What's best, I find, is if you actually have a Facebook group. And there's so many ways to save money with this. For instance, last month, Azure Standard had a great deal on pears. And if you bought 100 pounds of those pears, they were only 60 cents a pound. You can't even buy regular pears for 60 cents a pound. So a bunch of families in our local Facebook group got together, purchased bulk orders of pears, and divvied them up. Maybe you don't have a local buyers Facebook group. It's really easy to start one. I would suggest going onto your community Facebook group. Almost all the cities I know of have a community page. Put up a link to a new group asking, is anyone interested in being on the lookout for wholesome deals? Obviously, you want people you can trust who are going to actually pick up the food that you're going to buy. So start out small at first. You don't have to do a Facebook group if you don't do Facebook. You can even have a text group. Just have about a half a dozen to a dozen people who are going to be on the lookout for deals, who are going to be willing to eat the same kind of food as you. A buyer's group can really do a lot at a farmer's market or with local farmers. If you have a dozen people or a half dozen people and you know that between you all that you could split up a huge bulk order of apples or pears or tomatoes, whatever, and you go up to your local farmer and say, hey, can you cut down this price? Sometimes they'll even cut a very large amount off the price, up to 50%, if I take all of this right now This way they don't have to worry about packaging. They don't have to worry about finding other buyers. You've already done the work, and it's not really work for you because you have friends and family who are just going to come to your house and pick up this food right away because they know the rules, they know the Buyers Club. Maybe you have friends who are always on the lookout for great deals at your local grocery store, and they see that something is going on sale, so they let the buyers group know and they grab enough for everyone. So a really practical thing that saves us a lot of money is having a recipe binder. I find that a lot of people think recipe binders or just writing down recipes in general is old-fashioned. But the way this saves me money is I have about 14 recipes. I guess you could call this my version of meal planning. I am a person who really hates like nitty-gritty step-by-step planning, so I kind of shy away from that. But having like 14 recipes that you know and you're just so familiar with the ingredients makes it so much easier when you go to the grocery store because you have these kind of memorized, and having them written down on paper instead of on a Pinterest board or online really makes them stick in your head better, I find. And the more that you are familiar with these recipes, the less you are going to overbuy or underbuy or forget things. I rarely forget things anymore. And just because you only have these, like I say 14 recipes because I think that's a good starting point, but just because you have a few recipes doesn't mean that you can't branch out on days when you have more time or plan a day to be more creative and try a fun meal. But when you do the nitty-gritty meal planning and you're going through every single recipe and having to find new ingredients, it's just not going to work, and you're really going to find yourself resorting to more fast foods or more prepackaged food. Whereas if you have these recipes that you're really familiar with, it's going to be so easy for you to know, oh my goodness, this is a busy day, I'm going to make such and such recipe. For me, it's spaghetti, or I will do baked potatoes and I will make a mushroom and beef gravy. It's done in under 30 minutes and I make that. The recipe is in my head and it's not gonna be any like extra mental stress. So I'm not going to waste time running to the store to buy fish sticks or some other unhealthy and expensive food. So another thing I do is I don't do breakfast and lunch. And I don't mean we literally don't eat breakfast or lunch, but I don't buy what people normally consider breakfast and lunch in the United States. We never buy cereal. That's another food that by pound is really just as expensive or more expensive than good quality meat, and it really has no nutrition in it. The big staple in our house is oatmeal or my homemade bread. We'll do scrambled eggs. It's really not a lot more work to do these things in the morning, especially if you have the recipe memorized and you're on a rhythm. For the oatmeal, I like to do a little variation. My kids really love chocolate oatmeal. I'll do craisin oatmeal. I have a banana, I have a pumpkin, I have an apple one. It's really basic, just some fruit, sugar, cinnamon, and water. You can have a lot of fun with oatmeal, and my kids really don't ever seem to get tired of it. As far as lunch goes, of course, we eat lunch as well, but I don't do the sandwich and chips and lunch meat thing. Lunch meat is really expensive, and it also usually has nitrates and a lot of other nasty stuff that I'd rather avoid. What I generally will do is I will double dinner or even triple dinner the day before, and when my kids go to school, I will put it in thermoses and they can bring it to school. It's funny how often they get comments from their teachers and fellow students, like everyone has it in their head that you have to have a sandwich and chips for lunch, and people think it's weird they don't, but they stay more full, they're fine with it. Chips, like you know, chips are pretty much never healthy. Even the healthy organic brands, I think there's one or two that might be made with coconut oil that are fine, but even the organic brands generally are made with soybean or canola oil, which is never good for you. So we generally will do popcorn if someone feels like something, if somebody wants something salty and crunchy, but in general, lunch is a leftover casserole or soup along with a piece of bread, maybe a dessert if we've decided to make a dessert, and a fruit. So I know it's impossible to cook everything from scratch in your kitchen, or at least it's impossible for me, but there are 4 really basic foods I've learned to cook from scratch that are really easy to make. They save our family a lot of money and they have a lot of health benefits when made at home. So those 4 foods that I make regularly are mayonnaise. Mayonnaise is just a few eggs and some oil. If you've made it once, you probably can memorize the recipe and make it over and over again. I call mayonnaise from the store heart attack in a jar. Like, there's soybean oil, there's canola oil, there's generally natural flavors or some other code word for MSG in it. And there are healthy options at the store, like Sir Kensington's is a great brand. But the last time I checked, Sir Kensington's was like $8 for a small jar. You can make that much mayonnaise at home for probably $4 or less, so you're saving yourself a lot of money. And a trick that I've learned recently, if you add a little bit of whey or apple cider vinegar, some type of fermented food, that mayonnaise will last for at least a month in the refrigerator. And that mayonnaise is the base for the next food that we always make at home, and that's salad dressing. So I've heard a lot of people complain, oh, homemade salad dressing just isn't as good as store-bought. It's because you're not adding enough spices. I double or triple the spices in my recipes. It's just 2 parts oil to 1 part vinegar, spice it to taste, and you have a great salad dressing. If you add mayonnaise instead of oil or as part of the oil, you have this really creamy salad dressing. That's the way our family likes it. The next food that I think is really worth making from scratch at home is yogurt. But really, you can take any kind of milk, even cheap conventional milk, and turn it into a very nutritious milk by making 24-hour fermented yogurt. The yogurt at the store has been fermented the minimum amount of time, and it really doesn't have a lot of acidophilus and good bacteria in it. But when you do it at home for 10, 12, up to 24 hours, you just get this powerhouse of probiotics, and it saves you money as well. So we always do our yogurt at home. And the last food that we almost never buy at the store is bone broth. So bone broth is really popular these days, not only because it's so easy to make, but it's almost free when you use scrap bones and maybe some veggie scraps, your carrot ends, your onion ends, the tops of your celery. And basically you just throw all those in a pot with some apple cider vinegar, boil them for 12 hours, and you have this really nutritious broth. And you get about double what one of those little square containers at the store from just one chicken. So I'd say those little square containers at the store are what, $2 to $3 usually, and you're probably doing yours for $3. So that's saving yourself a good $4 to $6. And on top of that, it's so much more nutritious when you make it at home because you boil it for longer, you get more of the nutrition out. You have this having bone broth around is just a staple for so many easy from scratch recipes, soups, risottos. It gives flavor to your rice and your bean soups. On these tips interesting or helpful, please let me know. I have lots of other tips like this, and I would love to know your tips in the comments. And if you want to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe to this channel.